Welcome to Serenity Wealth Now with Chris Cooper. This is not your typical financial radio show. As a licensed CPA, insurance agent, and investment advisory representative, Chris coaches his clients on a holistic view of financial well-being with an objective of providing a complete financial strategy to fund life's goals. Chris is here to guide you down the path to the financial serenity you deserve. Now, here's Chris Cooper.
All right. Good morning, folks. It is Groundhog Day. February is here. Hard to believe it, but it is Groundhog Day, and that means we get to figure out if we are going to have a longer winter or an early spring. Now, I don't really know what that means because I'm pretty sure spring takes place on the same freaking day every single year. I don't also know why we have a rodent picking out our time frame of the weather, but it is what it is. It's a tradition, and so we're going to talk about a little bit about that with Groundhog Day. Today, I have a good friend of mine, Adam Willis, in with me in studio. Adam, how are you? Thanks for coming in.
I'm doing well. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah. So, Adam, you are an insurance agent for First Mid Insurance Group. And as an insurance agent myself, I thought we'd start with a little bit of a Groundhog Day trivia thing here. Do you know the name of the insurance agent in the movie Groundhog Day?
You know, I feel like I should know the answer to that because we just talked about that before we started.
And you still don't.
I'm going to say Ned.
Ned Ryerson is his name. Yeah, Ned Ryerson. So meets up with Bill Murray, who his name was Phil Connors, just so you know. So meets up with Phil Connors out of the blue and has a little trench coat and talks like an insurance agent. You know, the typical insurance agent look to him. Talking about all the different things he does. And of course, you know he's an insurance agent because right away he says, hey, you probably don't have any life insurance and you need to be sold some stuff, right?
Yeah, you can pretty much pick an insurance agent out of a crowd pretty easily.
Yeah. So what I think is funny, and I pride myself in not being Ned Ryerson, and you don't strike me as the insurance agent type either.
I try not to. I put a lot of effort into that, actually.
Yeah. Well, do you, though? Do you have to, you know?
I mean,
it's a stereotype thing. It's kind of interesting, right? And so, you know, life insurance, even, you know, property and casualty, which I know is your specialty. So tell me a little bit about the insurance you focus on.
So, yeah, I mean, well, at First Mid, we discussed a little bit, but First Mid they're based out of Illinois. Very, very large book of the commercial side of things. Mm-hmm. They recently acquired us as we were Mid Rivers Insurance, now obviously working under First Mid Insurance, and we bring a much larger personal lines business. And
personal lines would be property, casualty, so home auto in non-insurance people speak.
Correct, yeah, home and auto.
Yeah. So, and then obviously also with the commercial side of it, this is also the business side of things as well, liability.
Correct. Yeah. So we also focus on, you know, the business lines. So work comp, general liability, property stuff.
Yep. So obviously, insurance is, you know, but what's I think is so interesting is when we talk about insurance, people get that feeling like it's always about like trying to be the cheapest or whatever. And I find that that's really not the case. You really want the right coverage for you. And quite frankly, the reason agent can help is because it makes sure that they work for you to help, you know, fill those gaps and make sure the coverage you need is what you have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a pretty slippery slope, especially in a hard market like we're in. Mm-hmm. You know, people get very, very focused on the rate itself. And the proper coverage conversation kind of takes a back seat sometimes. So, you know, definitely making sure that your policies are unique, if you will, to your specific needs, for sure. And I try to tell people a lot of times in this current market, it's not a bad idea to opt a little bit more on the coverage side than the premium because, you know, it is a hard market. Things are being valued higher and people get very focused on that price.
Well, especially on something like the residential side, the commercial, the home auto stuff, right? It seems to be more of a rate game, but I will tell you, I know, and we don't have to name them on air. We don't need to do that, but there are a few companies that are out there that are notorious for not being there when you need them to be there. And they tend to be people that tend to spend a lot of money on maybe big sporting events, advertising, just saying, just, not saying, but saying.
Yeah, there's a lot of, you can't turn on a sporting event without seeing an insurance sponsor of some sort. Yeah. Some carriers do have a different reputation.
Yeah. And I know I've been with somebody that denied claims that were clearly claims, and insurance should be there when you need them. And that's one of the things that's important, more so than premium, quite frankly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's important to have a reputable carrier for sure.
Yeah.
And doing your research is good. I mean, I know I can speak for our brokerage that, all of our carriers are A-rated carriers. So that is directly having to do with their financial standing. So,
right.
Definitely something you want when choosing to protect your assets, right?
Absolutely. Now, you also mentioned the brokerage side of things. So you are independent. You do not work for a single insurance carrier.
Correct. Yeah. We represent, I'm technically an agent for about 20 plus carriers, depending upon what the needs are. Which
means based on every situation, you figure out the right coverage for that individual and kind of gear them in a certain direction, or shop it around with multiple different carriers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a broker, I think that's one of the things that we have at our disposal is being able to do a really thorough review of what you currently have.
Yeah.
Because when you have so many carriers, different carriers offer different coverages, and something might be a little bit more beneficial to be over at this carrier because they offer a coverage that, might be specific to your home if it's a higher value home.
Absolutely.
Or if there's anything unique about it.
Yeah. And that's, I operate the same way. We do very different types of insurance. I do not do the home auto stuff. It's funny. Everyone assumes, oh, you must do all this other things too. Yet no, there's a lot of different nuances to insurance. I do a lot on a certain type of insurance, business, life, using that in a different form and fashion, protection side of it on long-term care and things like that. Important. The wealth management side of life insurance, right? It's a very different ballgame, and quite frankly, I could not understand a lick of what you do. In fact, because I feel this way because you handle my home and auto. So
correct, yeah.
It's interesting, and I couldn't do my health insurance either. I have that's a whole nother game, right? It's just you can only focus on so much, otherwise you lose the knowledge that you have that is valuable to your customers.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I do not dabble in health insurance at all. Although it was part of the exam, there's just nothing.
Isn't that frustrating? Yeah. You're like, you have to take the exam on this piece. And I'm like, I'm pretty dangerous at this, but I think it's C, but whatever. Let's just move on and hope I do that's the things I care about. Right.
Yeah. So, let's leave it to the people that do it.
That's right.
All day, every day.
Yeah. It's funny how it's one license though, isn't it? So,
yeah.
But yeah, that niche that is very specific and focused because that gives you that knowledge of who should be in the right coverage for their unique situation. Right. And I think that's what a good independent individual does, shops the right coverage for you, thinking about you first, thinking about you as an individual first, what your goals are, objectives are. And that, quite frankly, is industry agnostic. And it's not just insurance either. It's everything. Right. So, which means it's about relationships, isn't it?
First and foremost, if you can't relate to the customer, they're probably not going to want to have a lot
probably
to do with you.
Not. Yeah, probably not. So one of the things that I think is interesting is, and I like to do we'll talk about Groundhog Day a little bit. So Groundhog Day, he has the ability, he basically, I don't know if you all have seen the movie, but Bill Murray, it's a cult classic, I guess. Would you call it a cult classic, Adam? I think so. Because it's not like a super great movie. I mean, if you watch it today, you're like, okay. I think my kids would hate it.
It's like a lot of Bill Murray movies.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. But it's got a bunch of little good one-liners in it, right? He lives the same day over and over again until he gets it right. And there's a few little nuances to it. But at the end of the movie, he ends up getting the girl. Not to be the spoiler, I'm sorry. He gets the girl, but he does it by messing up a whole lot along the way, right? And so he makes some mistakes along the way, keeps reliving and keeps redoing it until he gets it 100% right. And a lot of times I look at what I do to try to help people. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. It would be kind of cool to just be able to live the same kind of thing over and over and over again until you get it 100% correct. We just don't live in that world, do we?
No. I don't know if I don't know if I want to have to relive it that many times.
Right? It would be kind of frustrating. Yeah. But man, you'd be an expert at certain things. So the cool things is he got to learn how to play the piano, which I think is pretty neat. If I could do that in one day, that would be amazing. Takes some time, right? I'm not very musically talented, so maybe that's a goal or wish of mine, but
yeah, nor am I.
No. But one of the things that when I think about being able, not being able to live the day over and over and again because you don't know what's going to happen, that is why insurance is important. It's not because you want to pay this bill because it's required. If you don't have insurance, something happens to you. If it's life insurance, for example, somebody passes away. Well, there's a gap. There's something missing, and it's not just emotions. Of course, the emotions are there, but there's the financial ramifications of that decision as well. Home, auto, it's very tangible, right?
Right.
Accident happens. You need to get it replaced. So people think about it a little bit differently, I think. But that's what insurance is really there for, that what if, that concern, that catastrophe. And it's a pricing game. But at the same point in time, it's also kind of about making sure that they're there to help you.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a necessary evil, more so probably in this market than a lot.
So what's going on in the P&C market? Because my market's very different on my focus on life insurance. So talk to me a little bit about what's going on in the home and auto world.
Really, I mean, at the end of the day, it's inflation and catastrophic losses.
So with catastrophic losses, so like we had the big hailstorm last year.
Right. Wentzville, O'Fallon, and then also St. Louis County.
Fires in California. That's going to be a problem, I think.
We're going to feel that in about a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Floods. Big deal.
Yeah.
Right? So insurance rates are affected by those types of situations.
Right. And that's, I think, one of the things that a lot of people have a hard time understanding is everybody thinks that it's super individualized.
Right.
So when their rates go up, they almost take it personally, like they're taking a direct hit from the insurance carrier.
Right.
But in reality, these are your insurance payment that you're paying is basically it's going into a pool of money. And whenever there's catastrophic losses across the country, it's pulled out of that pool to pay it.
Right.
And that's something I have to explain to people a lot, because if insurance was individualized, our premiums would be significantly higher than they actually are, which is hard for a lot of people to believe.
Well, because it's kind of like it's gambling at some point in time, right? You almost need to spread that risk over a larger group. And when you spread the risk over a larger group, it helps you as an individual, because now it's not just on you. And it theoretically helps the carriers as well. Right.
And then when you have the amount of catastrophic losses that just sort of seem to be snowballing, year after year. Well, and then, I mean, Helene, right? The hurricanes, it keeps snowballing. And then you throw the fact that everything's being valued higher. So which is the
inflation component.
Yep. Right. So autos, homes, like in 2021, homes were like overnight, they were $100,000 more in value than the day before. Yeah. So when you have those losses,
cars too, especially like they're getting more complicated, more computers, more technology, and EVs, right? All change that dynamic.
Right. Because if you run into the back of a 2010 Honda Civic, which I have a Honda Civic myself, love the car. I'm not a car guy. But if you run into the back of one of those, there's no computer chips, there's no sensors. It just $500 to replace that bumper. You run into the back of a Tesla, I mean, you're talking $2,500 probably, probably lowballing.
And it's unfortunate, like you were saying, it's spread over everybody. So what happens is, just because you have the 2010 Civic, that's not the average car out there. So unfortunately, those changing parts of the society that change the type of cars we have changes all that as well.
Right.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting way to look at it. And most people don't.
Well, especially, and I definitely feel for the demographics that, they've been around longer. What they remember is a time when, if you had no claims, your rates would go down at your renewal or possibly stay the same.
Right.
Unfortunately, given the current market, those days are far gone.
Yeah.
Right. So, these folks are having a hard time wrapping their head around the idea that if, we have all those losses in Wentzville and O'Fallon, where they, all the hailstorms, these carriers are going to come in. They have to mitigate their losses.
Right.
And because at the end of the day, it's a business, just like anything else.
You mean they're not profit? They're not charitable organizations?
Surprisingly, no.
I don't think any insurance carriers are, charitable organizations. So
no,
they are for-profit entities.
They are.
So are supermarkets, by the way, that, have price gouging and things, apparently. but we don't have to deal with that. So
Right.
sorry if you got the reference there, you get it, and you thought that was kind of funny. It was sarcastic. So anyway, so insurance rates for the liability side are increasing because of those kinds of social and just how it works, right?
Right.
And people don't understand that, but it is not as individualized as it used to be.
Right. And it's, we just haven't seemed to been able to come up for a breath of air, in between all the losses across the country, so it's just, I don't know. It's, there are faint signs of softening in the market, on the insurance side of things. So some of the carriers are lifting some of the red tape, that they had, like for instance,
well, and they're getting more and more red tape too. So but anyway, go ahead with your for instance. Sorry.
Well, you're absolutely right though. On some, like on the home side, it seems like the red tape is still there, especially when it comes to like roofs and
they're getting harder on the roof side for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And but on the car side, it's, some of the rates are looking a little better these days.
Good.
I say that with a little apprehension because you never know. You never know what's going to happen, but it seems temporary when you get a breath of fresh air, and then it's like, oh, then we have another wave of losses.
Now, a lot of carriers, you hear this all the time, pulling out of certain markets that are higher risk. You hear it with Florida. You hear with really California. There's a lot of talk about that. Now, California, I get for other reasons too. The business environment is California is just tough to deal with, period. Right. It just is. Everything's more expensive first and foremost. And then just the way that state is run makes it very challenging for, quite frankly, anybody to deal with. But I can say that safely in my office in Missouri. So.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, and there was the State Farm ended up coming out of like 72,000 policies. But again, that was before all that stuff happened. And, I mean, they had a significant amount of losses in that state. So, I mean, there was obviously some more with that.
It's just interesting how it all kind of works together. But ultimately, you want that coverage to be there for you, because otherwise, if you roll those dice and you end up having something happen to you, that's a tough pill to swallow. Right. From a catastrophic situation perspective. So it's got to be there. You got to have that right coverage, and it is important. Now, I'll talk a little bit on the other side of things. So on the life side, obviously it's very, very independent, very specific to your health, very specific to your age, very specific to all of those factors. It is individualized. For the most part. Now, you get into the group stuff, the group plans, it is a little bit easier from that perspective, because there's no underwriting, because they look at you as a whole population of an employer base. But their risk is less, because they're only going to pay on your passing away if you pass away while you're employed. So it's very smaller, right? So their premiums are a little bit easier to manage too. But on the individual side, on the life side, it is very specific. And interest rate environment that we're in today being higher, the interest rate environment actually does help reduce some of the costs associated with it as well. So it's kind of interesting. We see a little bit more of a different dynamic in that based on our current economic situation. Not that I like high rates. I don't know that I like higher rates. Yeah. So, but I also will tell you, I think from a financial perspective, less than 3% 30-year mortgage rates, that's really incredible, and like probably a once in a lifetime type environment. So maybe even too low. So. Not that if you have it, you should like, oh, this is too low. Can you just increase my rate? No, you should keep that rate. Like you really should. But even where we are today, they're still very reasonable over time. So people lose sight of that.
Historically, 6% is pretty solid.
Pretty darn solid. And yeah, it really is. It's just, we're not used to that. And that's just kind of, you get used to what you've seen lately.
Right. Well, and I always love having the conversation with, boomers, and they're, oh, I remember when it was, 12, 15%. It's like, well, I mean, that was on a $20,000 house, A
little bit different, right? Yeah. So, and that's my jam. Those people, that demographic, right, they've seen the Groundhog Day movie. So they know what we're dealing with here. So, they're like, oh, well, yeah, we could live it all over again. It would be kind of cool to see how it works. And, but anyway, so very specific on the life side, on really the wealth side of the life insurance, the protection side, because of interest rate environment where we are, we tend to see a little bit lower. It's just an inverse relationship and how that works. So, but yeah, inflationary environment changes things. increases the cost, makes your prices go up. But what I think is interesting is trying to, that not stereotypical insurance agent type of individual. So Adam, tell me a little bit about you and what you do, because you don't strike me as the individual insurance agent. So what kinds of things are you interested in?
What do you mean personally?
Yeah, so you're pretty you do a lot of activities, right? So you're pretty into fitness, right?
Yeah, well, used to own my own personal training business.
Yeah.
So former business owner turned insurance agent.
Yeah. Well, and there's actually a lot of there's a lot of relationship there anyway, because of the health side of things, right? There really is. People don't think about it, but health is a big piece of it, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and and a fun fact, aside from my boss, I don't know too many people that came out of college and they're like, man, I'm going right into insurance.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't think so.
Like I picture my 9-year-old son. I'm like, what do you want to do when you grow up? It's always, I want to be a professional athlete. I want to, and he's big in the military right now. He's like, I want to go to the military, which is
nice.
Well, mom doesn't think so.
No, I can see that.
But, just thinking about him, like, what if he would have came out and said, I want to be an insurance agent? I'd have been like, I'd have been taken back.
Yeah, I get that.
I'm like, I don't know how to tell you this, buddy, but I want you to aim a little higher.
Well, and it's interesting. I never thought about that from an aspirational perspective either. I got into the financial industry, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh wow, I need to become life insurance licensed to be able to help people the right way. It's a solution.
I think it was a solid move on your part, though. I mean, in the current world that we live in,
yeah,
I don't think you can understand finances too much.
No, that's very true. Very true. But ultimately, it really is, and this goes with a lot of industries as well, right? You get the licenses, you do these kinds of things. But ultimately, it's that relationship with the people. That's what matters. It's about helping those individuals and putting yourself in the best position to have the right tools at your disposal to help people meet their needs, right? And insurance is part of it, and it is that necessary evil in some respects, but at the same point in time, on what I do, it actually adds tremendous value, not just from protection of the unknown and the what if, but taxability. So I focus a lot on tax savings, right? And taxes suck. Let's just be honest. No one. Do you like paying taxes?
Love it.
Yeah, no, you don't. That was sarcastic. I could tell. Yeah. I'm pretty perceptive on this. I have never met a single person that says that they like paying taxes, would gladly pay more, right? So taxation and the results of that, life insurance is non-taxable. It's a non-taxable proceeds for the most part. There's very rare situations where you'll see a life insurance payout have tax consequences of it. Most of the time, life insurance is considered that tax-free type of thing. So when you're looking at advanced tax planning, legacy planning, life insurance is very specific, very huge, fills a big niche, and is misunderstood in many circles. And it's quite frankly, because they just don't think about the importance of these kinds of things and devalue that what if scenario.
Yeah, I would say insurance in general is probably misunderstood a lot.
100%.
Which again, I think adds to frustration.
Yeah.
When you see rates and you see, the effect it has on your monthly income, especially if you're on a fixed income, if you are at that demographic, the misunderstanding. And then when you do try to get someone to understand to you, they're throwing a lot of jargon at you.
Right.
And I think I'm sure you do it on your side as well, just like what I do. Having that conversation and breaking it down in simple terms to where people can actually feel like they're a part of the conversation and not being talked down to. And I think I don't know. I mean, as a broker, I feel like that's what I bring to the table. Like I just enjoy having that conversation, educating that customer, because I feel like a lot of the anger and a lot of the, people being fed up with insurance and just saying, I might as well just go uninsured. I feel like
no one does that on the home and auto side, do they?
People, but again, I try to level it. Like I get it. I mean, when you've done nothing, you've done nothing differently yourself.
I do. Yeah.
And yet your rates go up $1,000 at your next renewal. I mean, that's frustrating.
I get the frustration for sure.
But having that
just wouldn't drive me to go to the extreme of, well, I'm just going to risk it.
Right. Well, and we definitely don't recommend it,
Right.
And
well, I don't think the law recommends it either.
Right. Well, here comes the necessary evil conversation.
There you go.
Again.
That's right. Yeah.
But I think once you have that conversation with people, very rarely does that conversation end badly.
Sure.
When they actually, okay, well, thank you for explaining it. Now that I have an understanding about it, it kind of softens the blow a little bit.
It does. And you're always going to shop it around. You're always going to find the right rate for you, for the right carrier for you. And sometimes those situations change. Unfortunately, with inflation and just how things work in general, costs don't tend to go down. They just don't. Sometimes a little bit, but not to the level of extreme. Usually once you get to a price, the price is the price. You might get a little bit of up and down, but it's not like you're going to get back to where you were 10 years ago on rates.
Right.
You just don't.
Right. I mean, every carrier has their rate for that state.
Right.
But, part of that, as a broker, part of that quoting process is that we're going to do a review.
Yeah.
Right. Because we can take,
that's the key, the review.
Yeah. We can take that larger scope, and we can look at it from from an industry standard, all these different carriers.
Right.
Do we have the right coverage? Because there is such a thing as overinsured.
Sure.
Just like you don't want to be underinsured.
Right.
So you got to find that sweet spot based on your individual needs.
You do. And I think that's the key. And have you ever seen anyone turn down an insurance check, a payment check? I know I haven't. It's there for a reason, right? You got, that's going through a loss of a loved one. Insurance is there to help make the financial side a little bit easier. That's really what it's important. Big deal. Guys, I don't care what the heck the groundhog did today. Is he a rodent, mammal, some kind of thing? It doesn't matter. He is not a weatherman, okay? He's not. It's Phil, Punxsutawney Phil. So it is, it's a man. So the bottom line here, guys, spring's the same day, every single day of the year, or every single year, it's the same day. The calendar says so. And please, please, please hope for a quick spring. Get rid of this winter stuff, especially in the St. Louis area. We don't need it. Hey, Adam, thanks for coming in. It was a pleasure. I appreciate you coming in today and talking a little about what's going on in the home, auto, and really the commercial line of business as well.
Yeah, pleasure's all mine. I appreciate it.
And you are not a Ned Ryerson. All right, thanks to my good friend Adam Willis with First Mid Insurance Group. Reach out to us here if you want to get in touch with Adam. We can happily make that introduction. That connection is important. Or just reach out to Adam, First Mid Insurance, and he can make sure you get that coverage you need. It is important to have that conversation about your needs regarding insurance solutions. Protection is important. It does not have to be with that Ned Ryerson from Groundhog Day, the movie kind of guy, right? Always seems to be selling you that stuff and is only happy when you buy everything from him. No, that's not what insurance agents should be doing. What we should be doing is making sure your goals, your objectives come first, and protection has to be a piece of it. You cannot have a complete financial picture without good protection to make sure your goals and objectives are in place. That does not just start and stop with home and auto coverage. That's not it. You have to make sure life insurance is a part of that conversation. Long-term care insurance, big deal, has to be part of that conversation. You have to understand what's going on in your total financial picture, and you have to make sure you protect it. Income is part of that as well. Protect the income you need to enjoy the lifestyle you deserve. That's important. We don't have the luxury of living every day over and over and over and over again like Bill Murray did in Groundhog Day to get our life right. Tomorrow is going to happen tomorrow. It's going to happen tomorrow. We're not going to relive today. It's not going to be 6 a.m. every single day until we live that perfect day for tomorrow to be the day that we want it to be. That's not realistic. So we have to plan for the unknown. That's where life insurance and that's where insurance comes into play. That's where protection comes into play. And it's all to make sure you get that financial serenity you deserve. We'll see you next week.
This is Serenity Wealth Now with Chris Cooper. Request a free copy of Chris's latest book, The New Holistic Retirement, by visiting SerenityWealthNow.com.
Investment advice offered through Fortis Capital Advisors.